I had a dream last night, guys. It was a simple one, really. And all that happened was, we never ran into the scenario where one franchise got so damn lucky where everything just went their way that they were able to fit 5 All-Stars, which would break down to 3 Superstars really and then 2 All-Stars, under their payroll. Because through a series of unfortunate events, that's the reality that we live today. So now let's stop and take a look. Let's look at what the 2019 NBA season would look like if the Warriors weren't here. Because despite their predictable presence for the last 3 years, this season has actually been very entertaining, which leads me to believe it might have been one of the best ever if we couldn't predict what was going to happen at the end. And if you're walking around without a case on your phone, then it's very predictable that it's going to get cracked. Most of you have cases on your phone anyway, so they might as well look good, right? Athletic Cases has a ton of options with different player art from different sports, so if you want to try and save your phone from inevitably cracking in style, be sure to visit athleticcases.com with the link in the comment section and in the description. Okay, so despite all the Warriors quote-unquote struggles this year, they're now currently on an 8-game win streak. They've won 70% of their games, and they are 33-14 sitting atop the Western Conference. And this is after Klay Thompson had a massive slump. After Draymond Green, people were sagging off of him because he couldn't shoot. The whole spat between KD and Draymond when it didn't look like they could even make it through a season together. All that, and they are comfortably sitting atop the West now. But there was a good portion of the season where they were like 3rd, 4th, and the West has just been crazy. It's cooled off a little bit, but as we speak, down to like 11th to 12th place, they're still within reach of the playoffs. So now let's all of a sudden say that the Warriors do not have the championship basically thrown at their feet already. Let's say we're having one of those years where it is highly unpredictable and we can take each team at face value because we know that they stand a chance. Now this gets really interesting. First of all, in the Eastern Conference, the East has become very, very top heavy where you have like 5 really good teams. And then everybody else in that conference basically just exists to make the playoffs and then get dusted by one of them. That's basically what it boils down to. And it's also right now looking like the teams that are on top of the East, they're really good, but we know none of them stand a realistic chance against a healthy Warriors team. So let's take that dynamic away. And all of a sudden you're looking at Milwaukee, who actually has the best, they have the best record in the league. They're 34-12. Giannis is having a monster MVP season, and he truly does have the team around him now. Their underrated signing, I knew it as soon as I saw it with Brook Lopez. He's got shooters everywhere, got some good defenders. All of a sudden, in the 2019 season, we're talking about Giannis finally taking that step to the next level. We're talking about him possibly winning an MVP, and then we can look and say maybe even a championship and a finals MVP. That's where Giannis would take that next step into like superstardom. For all these years, he's been the Greek freak, but no playoff success. Now we can finally anticipate him taking that next jump. But that's not all, because the other story we have is with Toronto. They made that great move for Kawhi Leonard this summer, and they took that step from being pretenders to a team that we actually think could contend for a championship in a regular year, right? In a year where we don't have a juggernaut like the Warriors. And because of that, now you're looking at Kawhi Leonard winning a championship as the one man. He got finals MVP in San Antonio, but everyone who watched that knows that 2014 was much more of a team effort than it is where Kawhi Leonard was just the guy. So that's what we would be looking at this year. And then after them, this may be controversial, but I think if you're talking about like title contenders in a year without the Warriors, I think that's a situation where people would look at the East and think Boston would be the last possible team for that. And it's not out of me being biased, but it's out of the fact that I think Boston is the team so far this season. They're the team that nobody is surprised if they get to the playoffs and they disappoint, but nobody is surprised if they really hit a switch and they go very far either. And it's because it's simple. They've had the roster, like that was their expectation when the season started. They have the roster to go far, and up to this point, they've just been juggling, trying to figure it all out. So absolutely nobody would be surprised, and even this season, nobody's gonna be surprised if they go to the playoffs and then just all of a sudden blast through it. So in a year without the Warriors, you're definitely looking at them as a sleeper, saying, yeah, they're 5th and 4th in the East, but if they come out on top of this thing, nobody would be surprised. And in that situation, we would now be looking at a situation where the Eastern Conference has 3 legitimate championship contenders. How many times in like this decade basically have we been able to say 3 real title contenders from the East? Last time I remember that was like 2011 maybe. And then maybe people would even throw Philly in there. The only reason I didn't is because the Sixers have still not proved that they can really beat Boston, and as of right now, that looks like it will be the first round matchup. Boston, unless they had a massive losing streak, they're not dropping out of 5th, and it looks more likely that them and Philadelphia will be switching between 4 and 5 for a majority of this season. And then there's still questions about Jimmy Butler fitting in with Joel Embiid and how comfortable they are. Maybe they figure it out and reach a championship contending level. But okay, if you want to throw them in there as a sleeper, then you got 4 teams. 4 teams that you could realistically see making the finals out of the East. I'm sorry, Indiana, I just don't see it. I'm going to keep it real. I'm not going to pander. I don't see it. So then now we take our trip to the Wild West. This is where Denver has been first seed for most of the year. OKC has been able to stay in a top 4 seed despite everyone saying Westbrook has just been having a horrible season, which I said in another video, I think that's been overstated. You've got Portland, who because of the existence of Golden State, they are constantly in no man's land. Because this happens every year, they end up middle of the pack, and at one point or another, they gotta see Golden State. And that's like an immediate sweep every time. They have nothing for them. So then you've got Houston, who despite like everybody important besides James Harden having been in and out of the lineup, they are 5th seed and they're holding pretty consistent around there. San Antonio is back in the mix. And then the Lakers were a top 4 seeder. They look like they could be a top 4 seed before LeBron was injured. They were hanging around that 5th and 4th spot. So let's say that we're talking about healthy teams and we're talking about the Western Conference without this dominant Golden State team. In that case, I think many more people would believe in Denver. I say that because they're a really good team playing really good basketball, and although they don't have that one takeover guy, like they have Jokic, but they don't have that player we think is just going to completely take over and propel them to a finals berth, I think that would be much less of a problem if there were not a juggernaut like Golden State in the conference. Because that's what we're judging by. We're judging by the team that has to beat them to actually get to the finals. So if you're matching up Denver with all the rest of these teams like OKC, Houston, Portland, San Antonio, LA, are you automatically picking Denver to go to the finals? No, but they have a realistic chance in that case, which right now I really don't think they have. So then also we're talking about an OKC possible finals berth. They are in the 3 spot right now. Paul George is having an MVP type season. This is probably the best season of his career, I would say. And OKC as a team is just as good as they've been since the Kevin Durant days. Terrence Ferguson has been a major development for them because one thing I thought is at the beginning of the season, I knew Roberson's injury and then I'm looking at the setbacks and I'm like, okay, even if he does make it back eventually, I don't think he's going to be the same. I doubt he'll be the same defender. But Ferguson has really developed into a 3-and-D type player. That has been gigantic for them because the one drawback to always having Roberson in that lineup was that you could sag off of him. Can't sag off of Ferguson, at least not with what he's shown. So then you've got Noel, Steven Adams is always a beast, Dennis Schroeder, that's been a very big thing for them. OKC is a very good team. That would personally be my pick if the Warriors didn't exist. That would be my pick to go to the finals. So staying in line with teams that I think could actually go, of course they would be Houston because they're eventually, well, hopefully, cross your fingers, they're eventually going to be healthy. At this point, it seems like Chris Paul being out this long has been more of a precaution than something that he's needed for a hamstring. But they nearly made the finals last year having to play the Warriors, so if they come to the playoffs healthy, there's no way you don't give them a shot. And then call me crazy, but in a conference without Golden State, you could not write San Antonio off. They've had struggles this year. They had to play a lot of this year without a legit point guard because they were injured. They were trying to figure some things out. But in the playoffs, if the Spurs are healthy and they don't have to face a juggernaut, I believe in them against any team in a 7-game series. It would not be impossible for them to take Houston or OKC or Denver or any of these teams in the West. That would not be impossible at all. And then after this, I would have to fall into the sleeper tier. And LA, all healthy with LeBron, Rondo, and Lonzo, they fit into the sleeper tier with no Warriors in the conference. They fit in a sleeper because they were hanging around a top 4 seed when they were healthy, like I said. But realistically, even if they were healthy, if you were to put them into a series with like Houston, and both teams are healthy, I'm taking Houston. You put them in a series with San Antonio, I am taking San Antonio. They had a lot of problems dealing with them early on in this season. As a matter of fact, their season series is already done. They played their 4 games and San Antonio won 3 of them. I watched all those games. They were very fun. They were very entertaining. But yeah, I think the Spurs are definitely a bit more polished. Yeah, I just think that what we saw from the Lakers while they were healthy this season is that they were definitely making strides. and LeBron was doing very well with that supporting cast. But I think when you talk about the playoffs, I think there's a lot of teams built better for that type of basketball than they are. So that's why I say they would have to be a huge sleeper to get to the finals. It would still be very difficult even without Golden State. But okay, let's look at that big picture now. With no Golden State in the West, I think Denver, OKC, Houston, and San Antonio all would have real legitimate chances. Like, we get into the playoffs, we just don't know out of those four who's actually going to the finals. And then LA as a sleeper would make 5 teams where it's like, I could really see 4 of them in the finals, but maybe even 5. So from what I've said, that means that in the 2019 season without the Warriors, Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Denver, OKC, Houston, and San Antonio. That's 7 teams that I would say could legitimately win an NBA championship. Maybe some of you agree, maybe some of you disagree, but I think no matter what, I think your number would come out close to that if you're talking about teams that could really win it. If you add these sleepers to that, that's 9 teams. And just sit for a second and dream about how amazing some of these matchups sound. You might end up with Milwaukee and Houston. That's 2, I'm pretty sure those are the 2 front runners for MVP right now. James Harden trying to boost his legacy really high by winning an NBA championship, and Giannis also trying to take that next step. Toronto versus Houston, Toronto versus OKC, I'm there for either of those. Would any of you be opposed to a Celtics and Thunder NBA Finals? What if Westbrook improves just a little bit, made a few tweaks to his game, now you got Kyrie and Westbrook up there? Hell, I'm here for the street ball finals, Harden versus Kyrie. And the big thing there, of course, is Kyrie trying to win his first championship without LeBron. He's in a bit of a Kobe and Shaq situation. Not totally the same thing, it's not as toxic as that was, but this is what Kyrie wanted to do with his career. He wanted to lead his own team, so now he gets a chance to prove that. I mean, there's a ton of possibilities with these matchups that are all very entertaining. Of course, as NBA fans, regular NBA fans, I don't think they would care to see Denver or San Antonio in either of these scenarios. I think the ones involving like mega star power, I think that would probably be the most interesting to people. Maybe one of the long shots would be something like Toronto and San Antonio, Kawhi Leonard against his old team. Whatever the matchup is, point being that, man, the 2019 could end in a really fucking crazy way, if not for the Warriors. But unfortunately, in the reality that we live in, they've added Cousins, who physically looks like he's doing very well already in just his second game back. And yeah, to be honest, I cannot see an entertaining series like with anybody. Just looking at the way they can run their offense now, and when he learns it better, it just kind of feels like regardless of who they play, we are going to go through our 3rd straight year of a very predictable NBA Finals. F's in the chat, and that's all for today. If you somehow followed this channel and didn't know that I had an even bigger one, make sure to go sub to Don2K, where I do more long-form NBA videos. The link is in both the comment section and in the description. Hit the like button, comment, and sub if you enjoyed, and hit the bell next to my name if you want notifications on future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.